a filter of looking at all of those different metrics that we wanted to understand. We wanted to provide local accountability and use local knowledge, in other words. So on the right of your screen, you'll see the watershed divided into 7 subregions. And those are the 7 that we used based on primarily on water courses. And we selected metrics. So this is the score that it all came out to be, about a C+ for the entire watershed. The wheel on the left gives you your key to the scores in each of those areas. Green, of course, being good and red being bad. On the right, you see the watershed divided into those 7 subregions and what the overall scores were for each of those watersheds. Today, I don't have very much time, so I'm just going to be talking to you about the water scores. If you want more information, you can find that information at verderiver.org and at verdereportcard.org, where we also have the methods document, and you can tootle around and look at all of the different information. So let's just talk about water, the water part of the wheel. And you'll see there we had 3 categories: quality, how good is it; quantity, how much is it; and then management, how well we're managing. I'm not going to talk about management today, just going to talk about quality and quantity. And again, on the right, you can see your key to those scores in each of the 7 regions. Let's just talk about quantity, how much of the water. And I have to explain a little bit here that the northernmost and southernmost subregions were not scored for water quantity. The northern region because there's not a stream gauge up there, and the southern region because we have 2 reservoirs and that's controlled by SRP. So we're looking at the water that's flowing. We're looking at areas that have USGS stream gauges that have been collecting data over a number of years. And we're looking at base flow. Base flow is the water, we measure that in June. It's the water that's flowing through the rivers that's not influenced so much by rainfall. So it's after the winter rains and before the summer monsoons. Just looking at the last 30 years and using those USGS stream gauges, you can see the evidence that base flow in the river is declining year over year. In the upper Verde, the decline was 32%. And in the lower Verde Valley, the decline was 46%. We believe this is a result of 2 factors: groundwater pumping that dewaters the aquifer and stream diversion through ditches. A warming climate and long-term drought also don't help with river flow. Well, how about water quality? Let's turn to the how good is it. And you see that water quality overall got a good score, but it was very uneven. Macroinvertebrates are the bugs that live in the water column, and they're a good indicator of quality. And turbidity, well, that's clarity, how clear the water is. And those 2 are pretty good. Water quality index was very good, but water quality certainty was very poor. So what does that mean? What that means is that when we collect water, when the Department of Environmental Quality looks at all of the water quality samples that have been collected throughout the watershed, we get pretty good scores. It's safe to put your feet in the water, to sit in it and kayak in it. But when they ask the question a different way, how certain are they that those scores are really representative of what's going on? We get a very poor score because there's not been enough sampling in enough places consistently over time. So this is an opportunity for us to go to all of the partners that are involved in this and say, let's put together a collaborative program to better understand water quality throughout the entire watershed. And that's how we're going to use these data. So let me just turn real quickly to talk about some solutions. There are many ways that we can work together and plan for our water future. Some of them require our agencies, some of them require our municipalities to work together, and some of them are things we can do ourselves. So planning for our water future requires us to integrate our land and water planning so that we can use effluent, treated wastewater, and stormwater more efficiently and effectively to recharge our aquifers. On the individual level, you can be river friendly. you can, and we'll have more to say about that at Friends of the Verde Rivers. We'll be talking a little bit more about river-friendly living in the future, and you'll be hearing about us, hearing from us about that. There's many different ways we can work together. And my point here is that just as we worked together and collaborated to put this watershed report card together, to put together this understanding of the state of the Verde, we need to work together on the solutions too. I want to close with this quote from Sandra Postel, a leading authority on international water issues, who has spent a lot of time studying our desert rivers also. And she said, this book is, I think, about 20 years old, but it's germane for today, that we've lost a sense of respect for the wild river, for the complex workings of a wetland, for the intricate web of life that water supports. And I would say we need to regain that sense of respect and that understanding. And so again, I want to thank all of our sponsors and partners that made this project possible, all of whom I know are going to continue to be involved into the future as we work for the Verde River. Thank you very much. And I will be happy to take questions later. I don't think we have any questions during this talk, but I'm happy to talk to you all later. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Nancy Steele, for that. Appreciate it very much. And really appreciate your efforts in spearheading the watershed report card. That was a huge, huge effort. It gives us a lot to aspire to and a lot to look forward to in the coming years as we try to get more into the green and out of the red. So thank you. Next up, we're going to hear from Kathy Kinsella. She is, many of you know her as, of course, an environmental activist, but she's also former president of the League of Women Voters of the Greater Verde Valley. And are you here with us, Kathy?
I am, yes.
Great. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, as Tim mentioned, I am the immediate past president of the League of Women Voters, Greater Verde Valley, and one of the founders of Women's March Sedona. Both of those organizations have a history of partnering with NAZCCA to address environmental issues and climate change. And the League has a robust collection of positions on the national, state, and local levels. And I urge anybody who would like to some of those positions to let me know. I'll give my email address at the end. Beverly asked me to speak, though, on a more personal note. I want to thank her for that invitation. I was there at the very first Cottonwood Earth Day that she organized in Cottonwood, and so I'm very pleased to be part of today's panel as well. I want to thank everybody who put it together, those participating, and those who are watching. And thank you, Nancy. We're also dependent on the water in this region. That was a very informative presentation. For me, though, I'm going to talk about what Earth Day means to me and what I think it might want to mean to others. 50 years, that's a big milestone. Usually when we think of things having, reached 50 years, we think of it as very celebratory, golden jubilees, let's have a party. But this year, it certainly is appropriate to acknowledge 50 years of Earth Day, but also we are in a unique time where because of the pause that we all are on in our human activities, we have a unique opportunity to see the impact that those activities are having. So this year, more than ever, it seems more appropriate to recognize Earth Day. Earth Day is really a global event. It's a universal event now. It's recognized in so many ways. But for us, we really want to not forget how Earth Day started, why it's so necessary to pause and think about how we do treat our planet. So Earth Day started in schools as an education tool so that we would be more aware of the harm that we were inflicting on our planet. It started as a day of peaceful demonstrations calling for environmental reform. That reform has still not happened. 50 years have passed with more population growth, more use of resources, and a roller coaster of tightening and then loosening and then tightening and then loosening regulations. For example, the Clean Water Act, the Endangered Species Act, the Paris Accord. Those are just a few. As human beings, it's our actions that have upset the balance of nature. The world's faced with the greatest rate of extinction since the dinosaurs more than 60 million years ago. But unlike the fate of the dinosaurs, which was attributed to a comet, what we're experiencing today is a result of our own human activity: climate change, deforestation, habitat loss, trafficking, poaching, unsustainable agriculture, pollution, pesticides. These are all just a few of the impacts that we're having on our planet. So for me, Earth Day needs to be more than a one day of celebration each year. It needs to be a day that we celebrate our commitment to the planet over the other 364 days. We have an ongoing responsibility to try to turn back the damage that's happened over centuries. We have to take individual responsibility. We need to recognize that what we do and how we behave has real consequences. We need to reduce our consumption. We need to reuse and repurpose what we can, and we need to change our habits that inflict harm on the environment. We also need to use our influence on the companies that we patronize so that they will act responsibly. The choices that we make in our lifestyle, in our diet, in all of our consumer choices, all of that impacts how companies act, policies they adopt, and what they produce. We must hold our government at every level, from federal and state to local, accountable. We need to carefully consider candidates that will make laws that have real impact. We need to vote for candidates that will commit to legislation that will turn back the tide of damage. We need to hold our elected officials' feet to the fire. We need to commit to writing to them, calling them, and keeping in communication with them. For me, Earth Day means that we need to make a collective commitment to our planet. I'm urging everybody who's watching to use their voice, their dollars, and their votes to influence policy. I want us to not think about just Earth Day. I want to think about Earth Year, Earth Life, and Earth Future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kinsella, very much. I appreciate what you say about it being a time where we all pause. I think that's important. I think it is timely. This is the 50th anniversary, and I think this COVID outbreak has certainly given us all time to pause and reflect on how we want the world to be moving forward. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
I wanted to say we have a lot of candidates. We have about just a little bit over an hour to hear from 8 to 9 candidates for office coming up here. So we're going to hear from Mayor VonGausig from Clarkdale. We're going to hear from, we have 2 candidates for Congressional District 4, Delina DiSanto and Stuart Starky. We have 2 candidates we're going to hear from for Yavapai County Board of Supervisors District 3. We have Randy Garrison, Donna Michaels. And I believe we have hopefully 4 candidates for Legislative District 6. We have Felicia French, Art Babbitt, Walter Blackman, and Coral Evans with us today. So we have really a lot to go through and not a whole lot of time to do it. Each candidate was given 2 questions to answer for the folks listening today. First question is, what is your position on the current climate crisis and the local impacts on our communities? The second question is, in your campaign platform, how do you plan to mitigate the negative effects of the climate crisis as an elected official? So again, I really want to thank all the candidates for being here today, and thank everyone in the background who's making this panel possible. I think there's probably, again, timely that we're doing this in a carbon neutral way via Zoom. It's a little different for us all to meet this way, but I've found that it works out really, really well, and nobody's had to drive anywhere, so it's worked out really well. So I'm going to just say a few words, and then we're going to hear from Mayor VonGausig. But I am, like I said, the mayor of Cottonwood, and I grew up here in Arizona. I grew up actually just a few miles south of where Felicia French currently lives. She lives in Pine. I grew up on the East Verde River, and having that experience growing up on the East Verde really sort of set my life in motion as far as being a real steward of the environment. And I am now raising 2 young girls here in the Verde Valley. And as soon as we could drag them out of the hospital, we dragged them right down to the Verde River when they were born. And I take many times during the week to bring them down to the Verde as well, to really instill in them that love for our environment. Because I've found that if you truly love something, as I loved my childhood, and as I love my state of Arizona, and as I love my Verde Valley, if you truly love something, you'll do everything you can to protect it. So as mayor, I've done all I can to protect our Verde River and our our Verde Valley. I've been an elected official in Cottonwood for 15 years. And I'm really proud of a lot of the things that we've accomplished as a council and what some of our former leadership has accomplished as well. We are doing everything we can in Cottonwood. And in fact, in concert, we purchased the water companies with Clarkdale some years back. And since that time, we've been doing everything we can to fix and maintain the infrastructure, all the pipes. We've stopped the leaks that were taking place. And I think we've reduced our groundwater pumping upwards of 40%, even with growth. We've been able to do that. So these are some of the things that I think are really critical to making sure that the Verde flows indefinitely. I'm really proud it's a great time to serve in the Verde Valley as well. We've got the Verde Front, which is it's a coalition of land managers and elected officials in the area. Friends of the Verde is part of that as well. It's a great cohort of folks that are all working together here in the Verde Valley to make sure that we're doing everything we can to protect the Verde River. So I am co-chair of the Verde Front. I'm very proud to be co-chair of the Verde Front. And I think it's important that here in the Verde, we continue to harbor that cooperation amongst all the elected officials. So anyway, it's a great time to be here serving in this Verde Valley. I wish a lot of luck to the candidates who are wanting to serve locally and statewide. I think there's no more important a time to serve than right now. So with that, let's start with Mayor Doug VonGausig. He is the current mayor of Clarkdale, has been the mayor for a long time over there. And some of the best advice that Doug VonGausig gave me, and I don't take advice very often, but he said, run unopposed for mayor when you run. And I took that advice, so I really appreciate it. It's good advice. I'll say one thing about Mayor VonGausig. Years ago, I think it still is his strategy to save the Verde River. His strategy was to invite one person at a time to float down the Verde River. And I remember years ago thinking, well, that's insane. What kind of strategy is that? And it's amazing to see that it's worked. You have made that work, and it seems like a crazy strategy, but cumulative efforts like that have really paid off. And I don't think there's one person we can point to here in the Verde who's done more to champion the protection of our Verde River. So thanks to you for that. And the floor is yours. You're going to have about 6 to 8 minutes to give your spiel, okay? And then we're going to move on to the next candidate. So thanks for being here.
Thanks, Tim. So yeah, those are very kind words, mostly untrue, of course, but and undeserved. But I did tell Tim to run unopposed, and it saves on all those signs that we scatter all over the countryside and whatnot. This is actually the first time I'm going to be running opposed since I was elected 16 or so years ago. So we'll see how that works, see if I still remember how to do it. Also, I want to thank NAZCCA for putting this forum on. I think this is really important. We should all be very proud that Earth Day has been around for 50 years now, and that we're all still kind of kicking, and we're all still trying to make it work. We're paying attention far more today than we ever have in my lifetime. And I remember when I first kind of became an environmentalist, and that was when I was a freshman in high school. Rachel Carson in 1962 wrote Silent Spring, and I knew Rachel Carson because she was an oceanographer at Woods Hole in Massachusetts, and I wanted to be an oceanographer. So I consumed everything that Rachel Carson wrote back then, thinking that I was going to be a wonderful oceanographer, which didn't exactly pan out, you might notice. But it did turn me on to Rachel Carson and to Silent Spring. And having read Silent Spring and being a birder even then, I was horrified by how human beings could treat their planet. It really hadn't struck home with me. I grew up in Prescott. It was a fairly insular kind of upbringing. I spent my summers greatly right over here in Cottonwood. My grandparents owned a store over here, and I would come over and help them, and we'd hunt and fish and mess around on the Verde River all my life now. And I just couldn't believe that people would do the things that Rachel Carson was talking about in that book. So And it wasn't just me. I think a great number of us who would consider ourselves environmentalists now started out with Rachel Carson and Silent Spring. It was the first really big wake-up call to the fact that we can mistreat an entire planet. And we did, and we continued to, and we continue to even today. But I have to say, my optimism for the future, the environmental future of the Earth, is a lot higher today than it has been for many, many years. I see environmentalism being in the mainstream now. I see politicians. I see all of this, the great politicians that we have on this panel today. And most of us wouldn't call ourselves politicians, but here we are. And we're very concerned with the planet, and we're very concerned with how the city of Cottonwood, the city of Flagstaff, the town of Camp Verde, Coconino County, Yavapai County operate themselves in such a way that is so much more responsible for the planet than it was when I was in high school. So congratulations to all of you. Congratulations to 50 years of Earth Day. And I can only see really good things in the future, except for this one big unknown that we have out there, and that's climate change. Climate change I think about a lot because of my involvement with the Verde River, and Nancy just gave us a really good explanation of the flows of the Verde River and how that's one of our primary concerns. It's also one of the things most immediately impacted by climate change. Arguably, and I think I'm on solid ground saying this, climate change and this, what we used to think was the drought, and we've come to understand is kind of a new normal given climate change, have reduced the flows of the Verde River, I think, more, quite a bit more than any of the other impacts. Those other impacts being withdrawal from the groundwater, people's consumption of the water, agricultural use, all of these other things. But all of those are just kind of additional negative factors in the flow of the river compared to climate change. And climate change, as far as the Verde River is concerned, also lends a tremendous amount of uncertainty to the whole thing. We don't know what the recharge rates are going to be in the higher elevations in the whole Colorado's watershed, the whole world's watershed. We don't know how having snow run off instead of infiltrate into the ground and then recharge the groundwater, which makes rivers run eventually, how that's going to impact. And all of those things are so difficult to do anything about because they require everybody to act. Everybody in the entire United States of America, everybody in the world ultimately has got to make some changes. And we're going to have to put up with higher costs and less convenience and a lot of those other things in order to do that. Tim and Art and Randy and Coral and I can attest to the fact that those aren't popular things for politicians to do. You don't normally want to go to your electorate and say, hey, you know what I'm going to do for you? I'm going to raise your water rates. But Tim's done that and I've done that. And in fact, when Tim said that we've reduced our water consumption in both Clarkdale and Cottonwood by 40% or more since we purchased the water company, that's how we did it. And it isn't popular. A lot of people come out to talk to you about that, but it works and it's necessary. And I always think as a small, very small town mayor, with climate change, you can do either of two things or maybe both. You can either intercede in what's happening with climate change. You can try to make some kind of an impact on whether climate change happens or doesn't happen. Or you can adapt to the results of climate change. And in the smaller you are, the more adaptable you have to become and the more reactive. But there are things that we can do even in small towns like Cottonwood and Clarkdale and Jerome and Sedona and Flagstaff. These are all communities that can reduce their consumption, that can help their citizens understand that reducing their overall consumption, becoming more sustainable in their practices is a good thing, not just for their town, but for the entire state and for the country. and being that model of how things can work and still have robust, healthy economies, I think is really, really important. And that's kind of one of the parts that we all play these days in small town Arizona. I kind of wear two hats when I'm talking here today. I am the executive director of the Verde River Institute. We work on Verde River science, but we also, as Tim said, we take a lot of people out on the river on kayaks, and we explain where that water came from and where it's going and what you can do to conserve it and how the bugs and the birds and the fish all need that water and what's good for them and all of those kinds of things. And they come away from that trip with a upfront personal image of what this Verde River is then. And they, I think to a person, then are much more copacetic about saving the river by raising water rates and doing other things that we need to do in order to get there. So that's kind of the point of all of those projects that we do. My other hat is, as Tim said, is the mayor of Clarkdale. I've been for quite a while. And Clarkdale has been this wonderfully sustainable oriented community ever since I've been the mayor, and really before. The impetus to purchase the water company did not come during my administration, it came before. And we only polished it off after I became the mayor. So Clarkdale has been on the kind of the forefront of those kinds of things, Verde River actions, sustainability actions and whatnot for a long time. And I'm really incredibly honored to be the mayor and experience that with these people. One of the things that we were asked to talk about was what's our position on climate change? And I'm sure everybody up here has pretty much the same position on climate change, but mine is number one, that it's real. I know as a biologist, as a naturalist, I know what birds I see coming up from the south and what animals are migrating northward. I'm not seeing animals that are migrating southward. You know, I'm not seeing new territories open up for pikas, you know, and those high elevation, cold weather kinds of plants and animals. They aren't moving south, but everything in the south is moving north, and there's a reason for that. Global warming and climate change are real. They're happening faster than I thought that they would. And I think it's really incumbent upon all us to do everything that we can to slow that down and adapt in some kind of a very progressive and positive way to it. Global warming or climate change are really the most difficult problems that cities and towns have. It's an impossible planning nightmare. It's so complex and depends on so many variables that are outside your control that it just presents us with a planning nightmare. You can't plan on what's going to happen in 20 years. You don't know what climate change is going to do. You don't know how it's going to impact your population growth or your energy consumption or the amount of water you have or any of those things. And so you kind of are left with being adaptable after a while, you know, well, let's just adapt to all of that.
Mayor, I don't enjoy doing this, but I'm going to have to ask you to wrap it up here shortly.
I thought I would have 3 minutes and then a lot of blathering, and said I had 8 minutes of blathering and none of the meat here. Let me see if I just forgot something really important, if you would hang in there with me. Yeah, water resource allocation, I think, and consumption is really important. And I think the rest of this will get picked up in question and answer. So thanks for letting me blather for a while.
No, you bet. Thanks for being here as well. And for those who are tuning in today, we're going to send out a email from Zoom tomorrow, and you'll get all the information on the candidates, their websites, their contact information. So any kind of follow-up questions you have for Mayor VonGausig or others, you're more than welcome to reach out to them directly. Okay, so trying to keep on time here, we're going to go next to Delina DiSanto, who is running for Congressional District 4 here in Arizona. I've never met you in person, Delina, but I do know that you've got 2 grown kids that you've managed to keep here in Arizona. So I want to thank you for that. I always like to see when our youth stick around here in this great state. And you are a registered nurse as well. I know that about you from ASU. So thanks for getting your education here in Arizona, although I think you cut your teeth in politics up in Colorado.
Yes,
if I'm not mistaken. So welcome. Thanks for being here this afternoon. And you've got, again, 6 to 8 minutes, and
okay.
the floor is yours.
Well, I appreciate it. So first I want to thank you, Mayor Elinski, and also NAZCCA for having me and giving me this opportunity to be able to speak. So the first question, I wrote some notes down so I could try to keep it down to the 6 minutes. But the first question is, what is your position on the current climate crisis and the local impacts on our communities? And first off, I have to say that my Republican opponent, Representative Paul Gosar, has an anti-environment voting record and has since he's been in office. But we have no greater challenge right now facing our country or our world than climate change. Humans have released increasing amounts of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere through burning fossil fuels, of course, deforestation, our livestock, and agricultural soils. We have seen climate change because we can see the longer, hotter summers and the shorter, colder winters. Fossil fuel companies and other polluters have put profit over people. And we've seen it here, even in Arizona, on the Navajo Nation with the uranium mining. And like I was gonna say, especially with people of color and low-income communities. They knowingly harm our environments and they knowingly harm our communities. They poison them, they're poisoning our air, our land and water, and then they conceal this information regarding potential environmental and health risks. This has also been caused by the Trump administration because he has repealed the EPA regulations and Representative Gosar has agreed with those rollbacks. As the effects of global warming worsen, our human health, our livelihood, our food security, and our water supply, which we have been talking about this whole time from the beginning of this meeting, and our economic growth will be jeopardized. Locally, what do we see around here in Arizona? We see the dust disturbances, we see haboobs more and more. Our traffic is growing because our populations are growing. Our airports, around our airports, if you look down through the Phoenix area, you'll see all that haze coming off of Phoenix. Fires, we're gonna have more and more fires as our summers become hotter and hotter. And they're saying that because of the growth, I live here right on the edge of Tonto National Forest, and I can see the growth of the grasses and the flowers and the weeds. And I think that we are going to have more fires. I have seen more people here on our trails, and walking on these trails, you see cigarette butts, and it's very, very scary about how this summer is going to turn out. So let's see, we have foreign businesses growing alfalfa. In La Paz County and Mojave County, we have Saudi Arabia depleting our aquifers because of the alfalfa growth. And then they take that alfalfa and ship it back to Saudi Arabia. And developers also are depleting our aquifers. We have to have, I'm a builder, okay, my husband and I, but we also have to be very careful in how we have growth and population growth here in our state. Because if it keeps growing and we have more golf courses, we are more oversight for that. So I pledge to work with clean energy partners and to tackle our biggest sustainability issues that we have. Now, number two, the second question, in your campaign platforms, how do you plan to mitigate the negative effects of the climate crisis as an elected official? So we must ensure, and I'm talking to the choir here, I'm sure, that the United States achieves 100% clean energy and reaches net zero emissions no later than 2050. And for Trump to take us out of the Paris Climate Accord has been a devastation. And with this November election is so important that we get Biden back in there and we renegotiate that climate accord. We need to enact a legislation to incentivize and invest in current companies and new companies to research, develop, and manufacture clean energy products. Of course, wind, solar, geothermal, hydroelectric for ocean and rivers, and also hydrogen. In Casa Grande, they had just built a hydrogen electric company for trucks, and I think that that's going to be a growing economy here in Arizona. We need to adapt farming practices so we have better cultivation for climate-friendly, improving efficiency. We need to have less thirsty crops and using science to grow more with less water. But we need to really look at this as an overall picture because we are going to be affecting our rural agricultural businesses. So we have to work in partnership with this. The interesting point here is I had no idea that rice cultivation produces methane and nitrous oxide emissions. And this was very surprising to me. And I really want to look into that more in regards to, because that's a sustainability agricultural product that we need for global food source. I also want to ban new oil and gas permitting on public lands and waters, which the permitting has increased, as you can see, through the Trump administration. And also GOSAR is working with oil and gas industries in regards to that. We need to establish programs to enhance reforestation and develop renewables on federal lands and waters. We need to, and to pay for this, we need to reverse the excesses of the Trump tax cuts. And that's going to be what I'm going to be fighting for in Congress. The time is now for each of us to rise to this challenge, and we must take action now. We have to come together, though, to be able to work together on these issues, because we are all in it together. But we do owe it to ourselves, and we owe it to the future of our generations to come. And so, again, I thank you. I tried, like I said, to keep it to the notes so I can kind of keep to that 6 minutes, or I'd start going off into stories. So thank you very much for your time, and I do appreciate it. Thank you.
Very good. No, you're right on time. I appreciate that. We have door prizes for every candidate that meets the deadline. So.
Oh, good.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. DiSanto.
Thank you, everybody.
We have Stuart Starky up next. You also are running for Congressional District 4. And are you with us today?
Yeah, I'm here.
Very good. How are you, sir? I'm
great, thank you.
I've never met you either. I look forward to it someday.
I didn't knock on your door getting signatures. I'm sure I do it the next time. So first, I do want to, of course, welcome Delina. She is an outstanding candidate, and it's been a joy over the months when we were able to be on the road, together, because it really reinforced that the quality of our ticket, the things we stand for. However this comes out through a primary is irrelevant. The fact is we must win the seat and help turn the evil that Paul Gosar does. So I welcome her and always wish her the best. So earlier today, I had an exchange with Judy Stahl, just from emails. And as we were talking about Earth Day, I said, but Judy, were you at Hands Across America? And we laughed about it, but the interesting thing is we both were. And it shows lifetime commitments to the issues that we're talking about here on Earth Day, dating back to, when it first started and I was still in public school. So really what I want to talk about in terms of being a candidate as it relates to your questions is, you heard the best answer already, it's real. Climate change is real. And I think the best thing that I could do as a congressman is to take my macro beliefs in that climate change is real and that we have got to protect the environment for our kids and for generations to come, and use that macro idea to support organizations such as the ones that are here today and putting this on. When we first logged in and I acknowledged that I was here, I said, okay, now educate me. And the truth is that's why I believe in running for this office, is so that I can give you the support you need in Congress to do the great works, on the ground in the neighborhoods where you are. Because I believe if we're going to see sincere change, it's going to come from those of you in the community every day and living at the river and understanding that the vitality of the river and its community is so important. And I think that that is the best job that a congressman can do, whether it's on an issue such as this, or even at one time speaking to members from organized labor. When they asked the question, I said, look, I joined my first union at 16. My second, the day that I became a teacher. So I'm a friend and partner of organized labor. And that's what we need as opposed to somebody like a Paul Gosar. And that's why I believe, certainly I hope it's me, but whether it's Delina or myself, that you'll have a friend in Congress who is willing to support and work on the effort so you can be more successful locally. When it comes to the specifics of the Verde, and as Delina spoke, also about the issues that are different but still touch each other in Mojave County, is our recharge rates and how we can find new sources and guaranteed sources of water. So I've talked about whether it's desalinization in California to try to move them off the Colorado River completely, and even move water from the Pacific here, that we can have a new source of water, because the growth is exponential. And seriously, I got many signatures up in Cottonwood and Clarkdale. And one of the things that was crucial for me was seeing the growth and how are we going to have the resources to sustain that growth. So I think we need to come up, quite honestly, with new sources of water. And that is, an intangible that makes people wonder. But, when Mojave County Republican members of the Board of Supervisors tell their people they have a 22-year supply of water left, what they thought was 100 years worth of water and not an issue, and now they realize is a negative recharge rate and only about 22 years of water. We've got to address that issue. That's where a Congress and federal funding can come into play, and something I hope to be able to work on, very quickly as soon as I'm elected to Congress. But the best thing I can do in terms of your specific communities is help you. And that's why I said at the beginning today, okay, now educate me. And what I want to make sure we do is we have an open door and we sit together and we understand together, and we provide you the federal resources we can for you to be successful with the programs, that you're having right now. I don't know if many of you are aware of this or not, but I go up every month up to Pine Flats Campground and to the aquifer there. And that's where I get the drinking water from my house here in Phoenix. I've been doing it for about 2 years. My daughter introduced me to it then. And one of the things that really got me moving into this campaign was understanding about Paul Gosar and his idea of uranium mining in the Grand Canyon. And just thinking, oh my God, that destroys, the aquifers and the watersheds for millions of people, from the canyon on down. So we have a real contrast in this election. And one thing I think you can agree on is that as we get through this primary and look to the general election, it is very real that the communities throughout CD4 help lead the change in Congress by making a change in our seat and making sure that Paul Gosar is out, and that whether it's Delina or myself, we have somebody who believes that climate change is real, that will oppose a president, who has, the first thing he did was overturn all of Obama's regulations and the ones preceding, and work with you together to make sure that we can win. So, you're all invited to my office now, where it has been sitting for 20 years as a teacher and as a principal, is a picture of my wife and I with Al Gore. And I can tell you that most of my understanding and sense of our responsibility came from Al Gore and An Inconvenient Truth, and really having somebody drive home to us the need for us to make change in the way that we live. I'm very proud. My youngest daughter got a sustainability degree from ASU. But I remember more than that when she was a little kid coming home from school and saying, Dad, you got to go save the polar bear. And me looking at her and saying, Jacqueline, I'm one guy, I'll do my best. She's about 7, but the truth of the matter is, Jacqueline, it's going to be your generation that changes the world. And now, in her mid-20s, living up by the Grand Canyon with a degree in sustainability, it truly is my job to create one last pathway for them to have the success that is needed for us to truly save the climate and save the world. And part of my inspiration every day, of course, as an educator, the hundreds of kids and families that I deal with every day, whether it's in this crisis that we're in now, which certainly will probably overshadow this campaign, but what am I going to leave for them? And I believe the role of anybody running for Congress now is to look at them and make the change we need for them. So I can tell you that climate change is real. The science is real. It's undeniable. And we do see it in the statistics that you even presented earlier about the decline in flow in the river. And we have to look and see, how can we serve you? How can we provide you with the resources you need in order for you to be continuing to be successful and to raise the awareness and to have the lifestyle changes and the things that we need in order to have a sustainable future for our kids? So I look forward to us hopefully someday all being in a room together. I hope you can continue to educate me on the specifics and the details. The first presentations were great, and I wrote down more notes than I have the immediate time to go and study. But that's it for me. That for me is that I want to be your ally in Congress to help you do what you need to do in order for us to be able to sustain this world for the generations to come forward. So I thank you for having a few minutes from me, but I'm really here to listen to you.
Very good. You too. You hit it right on the deadline there.
Okay, we'll share the prize.
Great. Good to hear from you, Mr. Starky. I look forward to meeting you. And also thanks for raising an environmentalist and keeping her here in Arizona. Good work. So thank you.
Okay, my pleasure.
Okay, so we're lucky this afternoon to hear from both candidates for District 3 of the Yavapai County Board of Supervisors. We're going to start things off with Randy Garrison. Certainly no stranger to the Verde Valley. In fact, I believe Randy's forebears had a great deal to do with the founding of this Verde Valley. So I think he could probably have a lot to say about the environment and how it's changed here in the Verde. Again, it's a pleasure to have Mr. Garrison. Are you with us here today?
Let me turn on my mic. Now I got my mic on. I am here. Thank you very much.
I see you now. How are you, sir?
Great. Thank you very much, Mayor, for hosting this, or at least moderating this forum, and for this forum being put on and allowing us all to share common voice and common concern for our environment and what we plan to do and need to do as we move forward. And I will proudly say I'm a Democrat. I think I'm the only one sitting at this forum today, or Republican, sorry about that. I didn't believe, or I didn't know that we were going to be political in our stance and going out and protecting and talking about the earth and the environment and what we need to do to protect it. I don't think really partisanship should come into this. I think we all care about the environment and our environment and the world and our sustainable resources. And so I'm going to try and keep it very nonpartisan as I go through. Your question for us to start with was, what is our position on the current climate crisis and our local impacts on our communities? And so I wanted to say, we need to recognize that our world is in a process of transformational change. It's time that we will accept responsibility and hold ourselves and others accountable for the roles we play in our environmental dilemma. We should be bold and continue to push for creative and innovative solutions. We will require action at all levels. That's personal, business, city, and national government. But it will also require a collective commitment to investment. That's where we all come in. As individuals, we will power and influence as consumers, as voters, as members of the community that can unite for change. Don't underestimate this power. When your voice and your actions are united with thousands around our community and millions around the world, we can create a movement that's inclusive, impactful, and virtually impossible to ignore. What I'm doing locally to be part of creating change within my community in my area is, along with Elinski, we're co-chairs of the Verde Front, which is a regional effort to ensure a collaborative approach to recreation and tourism for the Verde Valley, primarily focused on the river, but we also work on trail systems and environmental economics. I'm also a member of the Environmental Committee for the Arizona Community Foundation Sedona, and that group goes out and puts grant money in the hands of people that are creating programs or endeavors to change the way our kids, our community look at the environment and what we can do to change the use of that. I'm also a member of the I'm also a member of NAZCCCA and the Yavapai County Economic Workforce Board. And I can tell you both those organizations are very strong on bringing money into the communities and providing sources of support and resources for businesses that come in and bring sustainable practices and workforce development into our area, so that we can move away from those types of businesses that tend to use our resources and focus on businesses that provide a meaningful income and for our community, and build on protecting the lifestyle that we've grown to love and appreciate here in the Verde Valley. I'm also on the Arizona board for Governor Ducey, and I can tell you we've put a lot of work in the recent, in at least the last year. We've created a whole sustainable focus on going out and finding ways to support businesses that also create a more meaningful and impactful way to create economy out of sustainable practices. I'm also a member of the Northern Arizona Health Board and on the Verde Valley Medical Center Council. And we have also taken a very strong stance on going into our systems and the processes we use and the people that we partner with, and creating more meaningful policies on the way we do business, the way we take care of our customers, and also the way that we take care of our facilities and bring benefit back to our community. And then lastly, I am the legislative liaison for the Yavapai County Board of Supervisors. So while we don't typically, as a county, at the county level, make rules and regulations, we follow those that are put down from us from our local legislature. And so it is my role to listen to the public, listen to you, hear your concerns, find out what needs to be changed, what can be changed, and go up to our legislature, and we have quite a few of those people sitting here today, and talk to them about how we make those policies reality, how we change the things that at the end of the day will affect the way you live and your children live and the way we enjoy our Verde Valley. So the next question was talking about campaign platform and what do you plan to do to mitigate the negative effects of climate crisis? As I said, it's not really the county position. We don't really make rules. We don't really, we don't create policies. We take and listen to what you say, what you need, what you are concerned about, where you think we need to be focused, and where the rules need to change, and where the state needs to change its focus. And we take that up to our legislative body, and we ask for those changes, and we bring them back, and hopefully we're successful. This year was a dud, as you're going to see. We got nowhere with anything, and so that'll start again next year. But in my current position, I don't know what I can do to help you. Like most of the others on this panel, other than listen to you and advocate for more political action and attention to this evolving issue, I look to be working with those others on this panel who will actually be in the position to directly create and implement the solutions at our state and national level. I want to support your efforts. So I need our communities to share their concerns and ideas as what changes need to be put in place to manage the problems we face now and continue to face in regards to our global and more local concerns. We know change is happening. We also know change will be more dramatic over time, and we know that we need to make changes to prepare for that. So some of the things that we've been doing locally to prepare for that is food sources. We need to be focusing more, and I think this pandemic has really created a way for us to look inwards at the policies and the programs and the systems that we have in place and where they have failed us. It has broken our system. We used to be every day was another day type of a system. Just in time was the mantra back in the 90s. We didn't buy for tomorrow, we bought for today and dealt with today, and obviously that is working. So we need to figure out how to bring back those resources, bring back those products, and the way we deal with the needs of our communities more to a local basis. So food sources are one of those, and we've been very supportive of local agriculture. We've changed the rules in Yavapai County on farm to table, which has been a direct benefit to our schools and our local restaurants. We need to figure out how to deal with redundancy. we have the Yavapai County has been a huge supporter of solar. We removed our permitting process in regards to putting solar on houses. Very supportive of solar. Actually, we're working right now with a group, I believe, out of New Zealand that is looking to come in and put in one of the largest solar arrays in the United States. That'll be hopefully right down here south of the Verde Valley and in the Black Canyon area. But the problem is right now California gives away their power during the day because they're making so much solar that it's not usable by their area. So we bring it into the state and we get it for free basically, or pennies on the dollar. And but that does them no good. Building the solar array does us no good if we have no way to store it. So we're going to have to figure out a way to start storing that electric, start storing that power, so we can start breaking ourselves free from some of the more environmentally damaging systems that we're using currently. But it's going to take a different way of looking at the problem and a different way of solving it than we've tried so far. Also,
Professor Garrison, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I gotta ask you to wrap it up here shortly.
One last thing, and it'll be the last thing. It's I guess what I'm trying to get back to on the message I wanted to share with everybody today is socioeconomics. You have the ability to make change. You can be the change agent, and it can be more than your voice. It can be your pocketbook and your dollar. The businesses that you do business with, the people that you support, and the ways you go about living your life can make a meaningful change on your direct environment as well as the collective environment. So I would try and push everybody to be responsible. Go out there, do what you say, and be part of the solution. So thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you, Supervisor Garrison. Appreciate your time. And we are a little bit ahead of schedule, so I think maybe at the end we can go and just give some closing statements for all the candidates, give everyone an opportunity for some closing statements. So, but we are going to try to keep at least these two questions down to 6 to 8 minutes, okay? So next, again, for Yavapai County Board of Supervisors District 3, we have Donna Michaels with us. Are you with us this afternoon?
I am, and thank you for that opportunity to be with you today.
Great. Well, thanks. I haven't yet had the opportunity to meet you. I hope to soon. I do know a little bit about you. I know you've lived and studied across the entire nation, but have been here in the Verde Valley for about 30 years. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That's great. Okay. Well, thank you very much again for being here and taking the time, and the floor is yours.
Well, I appreciate it. I'll probably give back a little bit of time, which means I might actually get the door prize.
Okay.
I will say to you that it's a pleasure to be here today. And I don't want us to forget that it is a celebration. 1970, a long time ago, year I graduated from high school, unbelievable how much has happened and has not happened as it relates to climate. We're having the same conversation, aren't we, about so many of the same things. And so it's wonderful to know that we're giving a voice to the need and that we recognize the need. It's concerning to see that the progress is slow. Incremental is a positive way to say it. It's too slow. We're in a crisis. And I would start my statements by saying, it's clear. The science is clear. And indeed, it's not partisan. We're in a crisis. There is climate change that is negatively impacting our quality of life. And there are those who are choosing to ignore it. And that's the unfortunate piece of the story, that elected leaders, irrespective of party, should be at the forefront advocating for what is it going to take to make a regenerative approach in our economies, not just a sustainable approach, but one that actually gives back to our environment. I love to tell the story about viticulture and how wonderful it is once it's established, a low water crop, for example, because you can have that industry for generations, and we certainly should be that gem in the state here in central Arizona with our viticultural opportunities. But it's a low water crop, and so is barley. And we've seen families who have been generationally in the ag sector, in Camp Verde in particular, move from one crop to another low water usage crop. And so I think there are things that we are doing, and it's high time, certainly, that we do those things. But I think at the end of the day, it's going to require partnerships that we are just now beginning to recognize are important to not just create and perhaps meet over, but actually be evidence-based in what we're accomplishing together. So at the end of the day, it's really about stewardship. What's our personal responsibility going to be in ensuring that whatever role we play in whatever elected position, that we make sure the lens through which we look every day as it relates to our planet is about stewardship. And that should be the priority for us as elected officials, as candidates, frankly, as citizens. And I pledge that to you. And you can learn more about me on my website. I won't spend time telling you the organizations that I've belonged to. I will tell you this though, whatever organization, whatever community, whatever state, caring about our environment, caring about our climate is hand in hand with quality of life. And until we accept the personal responsibility to ensure that we are going to partner and provide in evidence-based ways stewardship for our environment, we will not accomplish the goals that we're all sitting here today saying we want to accomplish. So I challenge all of us, whether it's the Verde River, whether it's using solar, which we're using far too little of in this state. We should be the capital of solar in the world. And we have that opportunity. And so climate change is real, science is real, but so is our opportunity to do something about it. Look at the difference, just since this terrible plague has hit, that we've been able to see demonstrated in terms of reversing some of the effects of what we've been doing to our climate in terms of pollution, for example. And so I think the opportunity is as rich and as real as the challenges. And certainly as a supervisor for District 3, I would focus on all of my activities related to climate by recognizing that we have to do this together, that we have to have a partnership, that all of the players that are engaged today in this conversation will be the leaders tomorrow in ensuring that it's not just one community, it's all of our communities. It's not just the region, it's our entire state. And I look forward to working with you in that partnership for that stewardship of our environment and our climate. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. Thank you.
Wow, exactly 6 minutes. Good work.
Thank you.
You will get that door prize. Well, thank you, Ms. Michaels. It's good to meet you virtually. Okay, so we have, I hope, 4 candidates for Legislative District 6. I'm not quite sure if Mr. Blackman is going to be able to make it today, but I do know we have Felicia French with us this afternoon. And Felicia is one of many on the panel today that is a native Arizonan, so I'm pleased about that. I think you're 3rd generation. We're lucky to have so many folks that are so dedicated to Arizona with us. And you are a veteran as well. I think 30-year veteran, Felicia, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Great. Well, hey, thanks for being here very much. Again, I haven't had a chance to shake your hand either, but hopefully, hopefully someday we'll have that opportunity.
The virtual handshake here.
Good to meet you. And like I said, you got 6 to 8 minutes and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tim. I appreciate that. And I appreciate this opportunity to be here with all of you. Yes, we can't emphasize enough how that climate change is in fact real. It is not a hoax. It's science-based, and we need to have legislation and policies to mitigate its harmful effects on our people, our wildlife, our land, the economy, and our national security. As a registered nurse and Arizona statewide senior medical advisor with the Arizona Army National Guard in the past, and a sustainability scientist, a graduate of both the Air War College and fellowship at the Army Environmental Policy Institute, I am very aware of the harmful impacts of the climate crisis on a global scale, as well as on a local scale here in our Northern Arizona communities. When talking about the climate crisis, we need to remember how interconnected everything is from our environment, our economy, and our society. While traveling over 6 continents, well, I shouldn't say over, actually 6, because there are 7, haven't been to Antarctica yet, but close. I've seen firsthand the drastic impacts of the climate change and learned from the locals, from Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania to Mount Denali in Alaska to the southernmost part of South America to the Hindu Kush Mountains range in Afghanistan and throughout the US. I've seen how the climate has changed in each of these areas and adversely impacted local lives and livelihood. Close to home, last year I thru-hiked the 800-mile Arizona Trail and saw how waste from mining operations, and in some cases long since shut down, had dirtied our air, leached radioactive and hazardous materials into our soil, and poisoned our drinking water and supplies. Our communities of color and lower income families are being disproportionately impacted and dying at much higher rates from the climate crisis already. I saw this firsthand during my 5 years of grad school research that I did on the Navajo Nation. But now with COVID-19, we are seeing these inequalities worsen because of lack of access to healthcare and subsequently higher rates of pre-existing conditions that make them more vulnerable to these and future pandemics. Not to mention lower income areas like the Navajo Nation are the site of toxic waste and over 500 abandoned uranium mines, which have caused high rates of cancer and large traces of uranium in babies. About 10% of the Navajos don't even have electricity and 40% don't have running water, and they still use outhouses. Meanwhile, the coal-fired power plants that operated there for over 40 years, polluting their air, land, and water, and causing asthma from the pollutants from those, and more deadly diseases, generated electricity for millions of people across the western United States. Also, while on the Arizona Trail, I saw power lines leading from coal plants the hundreds of miles away on the Native American land. They lose 5% of their energy in transmission, and while these same coal plants and coal mines have robbed Native Americans of topsoil to farm and raise their livestock, as well as nearly sucking dry and poisoning their drinking water. Not to forget the extreme potential for wildfires and the resulting loss of life and property from the transmission lines, like what happened in Paradise, California, killing over 80 people just less than 2 years ago. With extreme weather conditions and their impacts, such as the over 20-year drought in the Southwest, which has dried out our forests, making them tender for wildfire, then followed by the monsoon rains after the ground is baked so hard the soil can't absorb the moisture and it becomes a catastrophic flood like the problems we've had in the neighborhoods in Flagstaff. So my position on the current climate crisis and its effects on our communities is that we have a responsibility and an obligation to do whatever we can to protect all Arizona families and future generations, especially communities who are most vulnerable and who are feeling the worst impacts. We can do this by making sure that all the stakeholders are brought to the table to discuss solutions and weigh in on potential negative unintended consequences to potential solutions. But we also need leaders and representatives who have relevant science, healthcare, and education, expertise, and experience to make these high-stakes decisions for all Arizonans. As an elected official, I will have been entrusted to make decisions that are in the best interest of all my constituents, not just the people who voted for or funded my campaign. In order to mitigate the negative effects of the climate crisis and protect Northern Arizona's water, land, and air and economy, we need to start with collaborative and smart policies. Energy and water conservation are low-hanging and low-cost fruit, so our first and joint effort should be to conserve energy and water on a governmental scale as well as commercial and private scale. I would advocate for starting with all government buildings and facilities transitioning to solar energy systems installed on roofs and parking lots to mitigate the urban heat island effect, which happens in urban areas when the buildings and asphalt retains the heat and causes the environment to be much hotter than it would outside in the open desert or forest. It would lower energy bills and reduce the greenhouse gases. As what the Department of Defense has been doing for over decades, you can see it here in our state of Arizona at the headquarters of the Arizona National Guard in Phoenix, Luke Air Force Base in Phoenix, Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Tucson, as well as Fort Huachuca in southern Arizona. By leasing government land and powering companies to install solar energy systems, utility companies can save money by not having to purchase land tax, and taxpayers save money by reducing our government's electric bills and our infrastructure. Additionally, transitioning all government vehicle fleets to electric with electric infrastructure, charging stations, this will clean the air, create quieter streets, and reduce the cost of the technology for the average Arizona, because the concept of economies of scale, when the government buys these things in mass quantities, it brings down the cost for everyone, including the average consumer. I would also push for smart water conservation devices such as drip irrigation, xeriscape, which is native drought resistant plants, and incentivize home and farming practices with drip irrigation and drought tolerant plants and landscapes. With Arizona being the second sunniest state, solar energy is a renewable and cheap energy source. Renewable energy can be placed at the point of use on buildings and homes, reducing the need for transmission lines and their inherent loss of energy, vulnerability to natural and man-made disasters, as well as potential to start wildfires. The Department of Defense recognizes that a transition from fossil fuel dependence to renewable energy is necessary for national security, in addition to the cost savings and health benefits that come from clean energy economy. I studied this extensively at the Air War College and the Army Environmental Policy Institute in Washington, D.C. We have made massive societal and economic transitions before for the greater good of our country. In World War II, we ramped up and converted our factories almost overnight to fight and win the war. Then the GI Bill afforded soldiers from rural America the opportunity to go to college, which created the middle class and helped stimulate our economy and create innovations that we benefit from today. I recall as a child when our iconic American bald eagle was near extinction because of pesticide poisoning, when our rivers were on fire from toxic factory waste. We could barely breathe or see the sky in our cities because of automobile and factory pollution. Today, with over twice the population and twice the vehicles, our air is actually cleaner because of policies that were born because of Earth Day and our other environmental groups. This 50th anniversary of Earth Day, we need to remember that millions of Americans came together to protest environmental abuses, which led to the landmark environmental laws like the Endangered Species Act, Safe Water and Drinking Act, EPA, and later a ban on CFCs that were destroying the protective layer of the ozone. That's why I know we can make these changes now if we work together. We just need to make sure that we don't go backwards. Fortunately, taking action that will benefit our climate and environment will also benefit our economy and economic security for Arizona by providing thousands of stable, high-paying, clean jobs and bringing in billions of dollars in economic activity. Reducing underlying health conditions that are caused by the climate crisis will also save lives in future pandemics. As we have seen firsthand how over 70% of the coronavirus-related deaths are patients who have underlying conditions that are exacerbated from the same pollutants that are causing the climate crisis. These real solutions I've discussed can all be turned into statewide policies that will offer win-win benefits to all Arizonans. And as you can see, solutions that address the climate crisis will also provide economic opportunities that improve our health outcomes and save lives. As a nurse, former statewide medical advisor and commander, a sustainability scientist, and a mom, I will bring my relevant experience and knowledge to my hopefully future role as an Arizona State Senator, representing Northern Arizona. As a legislature, I will always prioritize our family's health and safety and hold our state government accountable to all Arizonans. Thank you all for this opportunity.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. French. Appreciate that. Okay, so we have Mr. Art Babbitt with us as well. He's a candidate as well for Legislative District 6. Mr. Babbitt, I have had the pleasure of meeting you, and in fact, you were a great support for my wife as a county supervisor up there in Coconino County when she worked up in Flagstaff for many years, working on issues around childhood advocacy and all that. You were a good friend to her, and I'm pleased to know you. I'm pleased you're here today. Again, you've got 6 to 8 minutes. I don't see your face on the screen yet, but I'm assuming you're here.
Okay.
There you are.
I should be there. Okay.
How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Well, thanks, Mayor. I really appreciate the opportunity to introduce myself. My name's Art Babbitt. I've been 2 terms as a county supervisor up in Coconino County, a couple of terms on Flagstaff City Council prior to that. I'm a small business owner, run a farm to market and farm to table operation for 2 decades up here with my wife and daughter. My wife happens to be a hospice nurse up in this part of the country, and I have an 11-year-old daughter who is a wild-spirited young girl who's having challenges with being quarantined. I'll tell you that. It's been a challenging period. But anyway, really appreciate the Alliance, the opportunity to share some thoughts and perspectives, not only about what I've done, but also kind of how I approach these conversations and what my role as an elected official has been and what I hope it continues to be as I run for the Arizona House of Representatives for Legislative District 6, which does include almost all of the Verde Valley up to Flagstaff over to Holbrook. down to Taylor, Snowflake, Payson, just a giant rural district. So I think Doug's comments were really clear. Climate change is real. We have a responsibility to engage in the management mitigation of that real challenge to our communities, to our region, to our state, and to our globe. We have that responsibility as a member of the species, which is given the privilege to walk on this place. You know, one of the rules and lessons I've learned in many, many years is you can't solve really, really tough problems with simple solutions. Complex problems require complex solutions. We're seeing that in our current pandemic, and we're going to see that continuing with the climate crisis. That's one of the challenges, to be frank, is how do you eat this elephant one bite at a time when it is such an amazingly large and at times overwhelming entity. You know, one of there are kind of two primary areas that I see us engaging in. One is, how do we build resilient communities? How do we make sure our natural ecosystems, our economic ecosystems, and our social structures can handle the increasing intensity of climate change? That's one piece. The other is, how do we actually get down to the nuts and bolts of net reduction in carbon equivalent emissions? You know, one of those, I am a glass half full kind of guy. One of the huge opportunities that we have, if you look at combined total sector by sector carbon equivalent emissions, transportation and energy sector, about 60% of total carbon equivalent emissions come from those two sectors. Think of the opportunities as our transportation system moves from an internal combustion driven system to one that has great compatibility with an electric grid system that is increasingly fueled by renewable energy technologies. When I look at Legislative District 6, what are a couple of the really important impacts to our communities that we're seeing? For me, being up in Flagstaff, but also spending a lot of time in the Verde Valley, that the linkage between resilient and healthy ponderosa pine forest ecosystems and watersheds of the Verde Valley are clearly one of the most important pieces of how climate change is affecting the relationship between our forests and our watersheds and groundwater basins and subwater basins. The Verde River is the ecological, economic, agriculture, and social lifeline of the Verde Valley. It is really important that when we talk about climate change, we bring into the room the conversation of how do we serve competing interests. As many of you know, I am an elected independent in the state in my role in Coconino County, and I'm running for the legislature as an independent. I have been incredibly well served by being able to bridge competing and sometimes often contradictory concerns and issues to create solutions and move the needle forward. I'll just give you a couple of really important examples up here. I think Felicia might have mentioned, you know, all three of the largest coal-fired plants in northern Arizona are either closed or will be closed. Cholla, Coronado, and will be closed. Navajo Generating Station has already closed, as many of us know, this last year. There is an unbelievable opportunity to substantially increase the distributed utility scale renewable energy technologies to fill that capacity that has now been liberated by the closure of these coal plants up here. I've worked hard with the Corporation Commission to change rules that serve the interest of investment that drives renewable energy technology. An incredible opportunity for dispersed rural areas that have large land bases, but perhaps not the infrastructure in place typically for conventional economic development pieces. Similarly, in my work as one of the co-chairs of the Forest Restoration Initiative, engendering forest industry development, which serves both the sometimes competing, but in this case, absolutely aligned interests of managing and mitigating catastrophic wildfire to our community, while simultaneously bringing good paying jobs that diversify our economy, that allows industry to play its role in keeping our landscapes resilient. So the last thing I want to just talk about very quickly, and I got my timer on, I just hit 6 minutes, Mayor, so I'm gunning for the prize as well. Something that we don't always talk about of what I will do in the legislature, I cannot stress strongly enough how important electoral reform and democracy and electoral systems that serve constructive political discourse are to the climate challenge. We have built an electoral box that has rewarded hyper-ideological positions. It has not engendered conversations on shared sacrifice and meeting shared objectives. We have built a primary-based system that often engenders the most extreme candidates when we need to be in the realm of that 70% of the people who want us to get to work to do things. Strategies like ranked choice voting will be increasingly important for us to move beyond the confusion that we have in this state and this nation of we have confused political hostage taking and grenade lobbing for problem solving. The people who pay our salaries deserve us to work on their problems. And that is something I really look at as building a vibrant democracy that is based on competition and based on consensus is a daunting task. I would argue it is inextricably linked to progress on the climate front. Thanks for the opportunity to be here today, and thanks for moderating it, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Babbitt. Very good. Very good. I don't think we have Mr. Blackman with us today. He's another candidate as well. Currently serves as representative for Legislative District 6. I don't believe he's here. If he is, someone can patch him in right now. But just as a reminder, the Northern Arizona Climate Change Alliance did invite all candidates to participate in today's forum. So we're going to go ahead and move on then to the Mayor of Flagstaff, candidate for State Representative for Legislative District 6. Ms. Coral Evans, again, another Arizona native, I think third, maybe fourth generation native here in Arizona. I do have the pleasure of knowing Coral, and I can tell you she's been on some of these governor's calls. The governor's been calling all the mayors, just updating us on progress of COVID-19 and what the state is doing for us, and I can attest that Mayor Evans has been a real champion for her community, and I appreciate that very much. In fact, I get a little kick every time I hear her get on the phone to ask questions of the governor's office. So with that being said, let's get Coral Evans on. And Mayor Evans, you've got the floor. You've got 6 to 8 minutes. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mayor. And thank you so much for the Northern Arizona Climate Change Alliance and Yavapai Community College for allowing me to have this opportunity. And thank you to the other participants that are on this call and on this video chat today. It is absolutely an honor to be here with all of you. So I would like to start out by saying that believing in science is literally a issue or a matter of life and death at this very moment. I am not a scientist myself, so my position on climate change comes from my lived experience. I am very proud to be a third-generation daughter of Arizona. I realize that there are people who have been here for many more generations than that. But I am sitting right now in a house that my grandfather built in 1942, having this conversation with you all. And the reason why I say that my climate change or my position on climate change is a lived experience is because I remember when it snowed in Flagstaff, Arizona. I remember when there was snow on the ground from October all the way through March. I also remember when the Rio de Flag River that runs behind my house flowed all day, every day. And myself and my twin brother, we grew up playing in that river. I remember in the summer times, our protein came from the lakes that are around Flagstaff. My grandfather, who was a lumberjack, he fished during the summertime, and that's where we got our protein to eat. You know, now those lakes are pretty much dried up, and 1 or 2 lakes that you can pull fish out of, there's an issue with mercury. I also remember when going down to Phoenix, it was a big deal in that there were orange trees that lined both sides of Highway 17 as well as in the middle. And I remember when it was hot in Phoenix when it hit 110 degrees. Now the average temperature in Phoenix is 117 to 120, and we think that that's normal. Here in Flagstaff, the average temperature was about 80. Now they're building houses that have air conditioning units, and I'm running fans all summer long. And we haven't talked yet in this conversation about the climate refugees and about the fact that we have a lot of seniors that cannot afford to be running that fan all day, every day during the summer. So my perception on climate change is from a lived experience, not a scientific one. There's definitely something different going on with our environment that we need to address. And so what am I doing, or what can I do, or what have I been doing? I can tell you it's absolutely my joy to be the mayor of the city of Flagstaff, Arizona. And what's great about being a mayor is that we are elected in a nonpartisan fashion, meaning that we don't ask people when they call us up and tell us, how I have a pothole. We don't ask them what their political persuasion is. We ask them the address so we can get that pothole fixed. And we've done a lot of that type of work here in Flagstaff. For example, our city passed the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan. I'm very proud of that. This is the first plan in the state of Arizona, and it talks about how we as a community are going to adapt to this new norm. And it also talks about what we're going to do to mitigate our impact in the environment moving forward. We also have something called the Flagstaff Watershed Protection Project. We as the citizens of Flagstaff figured out about 10 years ago that there's a major issue going on with the forest fires in our region, and that we need to step up because the state of Arizona and the federal government had not. And we decided to tax ourselves to go outside of our city limits to match the forest because it was negatively impacting our watershed. We are also the first international dark sky city. We haven't talked about the dark skies and sky pollution, light pollution, but we have taken great steps to ensure that we can see the sky from where we're at. We've also, here in Flagstaff, our city is it's a leading city in the state of Arizona when it comes to water conservation on a per capita level with our residents and residential. So those are just some of the things that we have done here. Right before the COVID-19 issue hit, we were having a community conversation about declaring a climate emergency here in our city, stepping up and saying that we need to do something to address these things. We also have taken very strong stances against uranium fracking, as well as making sure that the buildings that we are building as municipalities are LEED certified and have solar and things like that. Just to wrap it up, what I think needs to happen from a state level and what I intend to bring to the state as a representative for District 6. First and foremost, I think it's very important that we as elected officials acknowledge that we have a climate emergency, that we acknowledge that as a state. I think that's the first step, is being aware that we have a problem and admitting that we have a problem. Second, we need to implement a climate action and adaptation plan for our state that has a very strong and comprehensive water sustainability component to it. That leads to my third point. We need to address the issues surrounding water. That means that we need to address the water settlements and the water lawsuits that have been outstanding in our state since the late 60s. We need to revise and look at and change some of our water laws and policies that ignore the health of watersheds and flowing rivers, and that artificially separate groundwater from surface water. We need a much stronger emphasis on the use of the reuse of the water that we're currently using and where that goes and what we're doing with it. And we need to restore local control to cities and towns so that they have the opportunity to make the decisions that they need to make at a local level, so they can help address the climate changes that they're seeing at local level that you may or may not necessarily see at a state level or even higher. You know, as mayors of cities and towns, we know what's going on in our cities and towns. We know when something's changing, and we need to be nimble enough to allow the mayors in our cities and towns to make the changes and to address the needs that they need to when they need to address them. You know, basically, Northern Arizona is home to one of the most spectacular landscapes in our country. It feeds us, it provides us jobs, and we need to make sure that we are taking care of it. So that's who I am, and that's what I think about. And again, I appreciate your time.
Excellent. Thank you, Mayor Evans. You wrapped up just on time. I appreciate that very much. And I'm really looking forward to the coronavirus curtailing so I can make my way back up to Flagstaff. I love your city, and it's been difficult to not visit it as often as I'd like to. So looking forward to that day. Well, listen, folks, I want to remind everyone who's watching right now that this will be available on YouTube so that you can view it again or share it with your friends and anyone else who you know is interested in voting, and you should encourage everyone to vote. This is an extremely important election this year. I'm really pleased to have been able to speak with all of the candidates. I'm saddened that some weren't able to join the panel today, but again, we'll be sending out information on their websites and their contact information, so anybody watching today can reach out to them with any questions they have. It's been really a very inspiring group of folks. Again, we are in Arizona in a growth state. My grandfather came out here riding the rail cars from Pennsylvania during the Depression to try to find work. He was able to find work with CCC out here in Arizona, which is how I wound up here. So when he first arrived, there were many, many, many less folks here in Arizona. We are one of the fastest growing areas in the nation. And so it's just so important that we all do our part to serve this great state and make sure that it's going to be good for the generations to come. Listen, we're wrapped up a bit early, so what I'd like to do is give everybody an opportunity just to make some closing statements, okay? So we're going to go back up to the mayor of Clarkdale, Doug VonGausig. If you could just keep them very brief, just a minute or two, give a couple brief statements here to the folks in the audience and let them know why they should vote for you. Mayor VonGausig, are you still with us?
I am. Yeah, thanks, Tim. Really, I think I want to wrap up just by saying that there's a lot of positivity to be had out there. There's a lot of hope. I see, again, I'll revisit the fact that I think environmentalism is on an upswing, and I think we're very committed as a nation and certainly as a state, and even more than that as a District 6 to continue to be on that environmental upswing and to tackle those really tough problems that need to be tackled. I think the people are behind us now. I feel very, very confident that we're going to succeed and we're going to continue to have the world to treat as a garden, and look forward to that. So that's where I am. That's where Clarkdale is, and that's where I hope we're all continue to work. I'm really impressed with all the candidates for District 6 and for all the other offices in the state. I think that's a great slate. Every one of them will be wonderful. I wish we could collect all of you and put you all in District 6, you know, but that probably won't come true. But thank you for the opportunity, and thanks for doing all of this, Tim.
Very good. Thank you very much. I have very little to do with this, but they asked me to moderate, and I'm hoping I'm doing a fairly good job. So, all right. So let's move over then to our Congressional District 4. Delina, DiSanto, are you still with us from sunny Cave Creek, correct?
Yes, I sure am. I'm still here. So I just want to touch a point that I wanted to say earlier and I forgot. So I'm originally from New Jersey. And did you know that New Jersey is the #1 solar technology and has the highest in solar energy right now than we do? And I argue with my relatives back there each and every day that we should be the #1. We have more sunshine than New Jersey does. And that is really what I'm going to fight for. It's not just solar, but you know, wind and geothermal and hydrogen. I really think that that's what we have to attack right now. Because if we don't know. It's like Mayor VonGausig says, we don't know what we're going to be like in 20 years. But you know what? We have to take these steps to make sure that we're not at the brink of disaster in 20 or 30 years. We have to work together and make sure that we attack this climate change and not make it a crisis, but make it so that we're working on the research and technology to move forward. So again, I look forward to seeing everybody again soon, and I'm hoping that we can get out of the house. And I do want to say that I have a green background, and so does Coral Evans. So don't put any of those funky little things in the background on us to try to meme us or whatever it is that you guys do with that green background. So thank you, everyone.
Very good. Thank you. Stuart Starky, you still with us, sir?
You bet. So as folks were speaking earlier, I went through my phone, and I don't know how well you can see this. I hope you can. This is a young lady after the Paradise Fire, where my students and I did a fundraiser, filled a truck, and then I drove it up there, past Sacramento up to Paradise, bringing bottled water, clothes, and toys. And You know, that young lady at the time was living in a tent behind a shelter. And that toy became the only one that she had. It seems I've spent a lifetime reacting after crises are over. I hope that I can, in Congress, help you do the work that you do so that future generations are enjoying the beautiful landscapes we have. As I mentioned before, I love going up north every month to fill up my water for home and hike Sedona. And I just hope that I can serve you and that young lady grows up without having to live through another incident like she did, and that we can mitigate the things from Katrinas and hurricanes and tornadoes and recognize that the crisis is real and that we have to all work together on the issue of climate change and also on preserving and sustaining, the beautiful landscapes that we have. So I'm always here for you. I appreciate today, and I look forward to what we can do together in the future. And thanks so much for having me.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Starky. Appreciate you being here. All right. Yavapai County Board of Supervisors, District 3 candidates. Mr. Garrison, are you still with us?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I wanted to say I really appreciate this forum and the obvious emotion and intelligence of the collective panel. I really have learned a lot today. I feel much more connected to all of you, and I really appreciate you all participating. And I appreciate this forum being put on in the first place so that we could all share and learn from each other. I want to restate that, this conversation is not really about partisanship. It's about solutions. We're all here to help. You are the change agent. You can make change happen. You don't have to be an elected official. You don't have to be a government official to make that happen. You need to help us help you. So I appreciate being able to participate, and thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. All right, we'll leave Supervisor Garrison and move on to Donna Michaels. Are you still with us, Donna?
I am, and thank you for an opportunity to make a closing statement. This has been a wonderful experience, and I look forward to seeing each and every one of you in a real room where we're both together at the same time soon. Please stay well. Please also know to my listening audience and viewing audience that I come prepared for this job. Well over 30 years of experience across sectors. I'm ready to fight for your voice, which has been lost in the conversation and in the decision-making in our Verde Valley. And that we must never forget that full community citizen engagement is the best type of governance we could ever have. And my commitment is to ensure that. And we must also understand that when we talk about land use, we are talking about water. They're inextricably intertwined, and we must protect both. And my passion, my commitment for the 30 years that I've been here have revolved around those two primary issues as well as others. And that's what makes me prepared and confident to say to you that as your District 3 supervisor, I will make sure I listen and advocate for your vision and for your community plan. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ms. Michaels. Appreciate it. We still have, I think, 3 of the candidates for Legislative District 6 with us. Ms. French, are you still with us?
I'm still here.
You want to give us a quick closing statement?
Yes. Thank you all very much for this opportunity. I just wanted to say this is exciting times for me. I see this as an opportunity to change things, to go to a better normal. And I have a history of fixing things. I like to bring people together collaboratively and stakeholders, and so we get everyone's buy-in and fix it for the greater good of everyone. And so this is my passion. I enjoy it, and I like being a leader. And I saw something the other day that said an optimist is somebody, a pessimist is someone who sees the wind and it's blowing against them and they get upset about it. The optimist is thinking, oh, the wind will change to our favor, and then the leader is one who gets people together and says, hey, let's change course and let's do something different. So I feel that way. I have leadership experience and I have sustainable solutions experience. And I'm excited about the opportunity to fix things, and all of us together and everyone in Arizona will benefit from it. Thank you again for this opportunity.
Fantastic. Thank you. Mr. Babbitt, Art Babbitt, you still with us?
I am, thanks, Tim. So we have so many needs in our communities, in our counties, in our state, and whether that is education, whether that is mental health, whether that is forest industry, whether there's economic development, we have to look at those competing needs on where the opportunity of shared opportunity is. I think there's a lot of shared opportunity that serves both economic development issues and climate mitigation and management issues. I think one of the challenges, quite frankly, is we have all these competing needs and we live in a pretty fiscally constrained and guardrail state. Sometimes that serves us well, sometimes that's really challenging. It is what the state constitution and the statutes of the state of Arizona dictate, though. And you look at some of the 2/3 requirement for raising revenue. So it's really important we have leadership who is strategic, smart, experienced to figure out how you plot a path forward given those fiscal constraints and given the competing interests. I want to tell you, and I know all of us in local government are just at the edge of the cliff about what is coming as far as our revenue shares, our sales tax revenues that are coming to us in local government. It is going to be absolutely impactful for not just a couple of months. We are predicting, as with the state, an estimated fourth quarter down north of 30%. Those of us who are in tourism-driven economies, we should probably go to the 40% reduction in revenues. The town of Page laid off its first 15% of its workforce. These are going to impact our ability to address a variety of issues. And so we need folks in, and I'm so privileged to be in company of thoughtful, good Democrats, Republicans, and independents who focus on why we are serving, who we serve, and aren't confused about that. So thanks very much. Appreciate this conversation and appreciate all your public service.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Babbitt. Very much. Again, Mr. Representative Blackman was not able to make it with us today, but we do have Coral Evans here. Mayor Evans, Mayor Flagstaff. A quick closing statement from you, please.
I just want to say thank you again to everybody who is out there in the audience listening. Thank you to all the panelists moving forward. Climate change is the #1 issue that we need to address here in the state of Arizona. If there's going to be a future for all of us moving forward, a future in which our kiddos can make sure that they have the ability to have jobs that pay them well, and so they can stay here in our state. And I look forward to representing us down at the state as a legislative in District 6. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Mayor Evans, very much. I want to thank all the candidates for participating today. It is just really a crucial time, like Mr. Babbitt said. You know, our revenues are going to be down. We need really strong leadership. We need folks that are willing to work across party lines. It's more important now than ever. So to all the candidates, thank you for your willingness to serve. For everyone that currently serves as an elected official, thank you for representing our great state of Arizona. Thanks for all you do for your communities. Your work is very important. It's very much appreciated. For the veterans here with us, thanks for your service to our nation, of course, as well. And this is the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, so go out and give the Earth a big hug. It certainly needs it. Everyone stay safe and be well. And remember, this entire forum was brought to us by the Northern Arizona Climate Change Alliance. So thanks to our friends from NAZCCA and for Yavapai College, of course, for their involvement in this forum. And that's it for today. So again, thanks to you all. Take care and hope to see you soon, not virtually, but in person.